Okay, Stream Team, I'm going to show you a few tips on how to get good video. First one, if you're on camera 3, which is this camera, it's our tighter shot. To start off, now most of the time this is already going to be set up for you, but if you run into problems and you're having issues, tell the camera director through your headphone to switch to a different camera angle so that you can quickly correct it. We don't want to wait until after the video's already shot. We want to fix any problems right away, so that the rest of the teaching is going to be good, solid camera work. So if your camera's not cooperating like it should be, what you want to do is you want to loosen up both of these, okay, so that when you let go of the camera, it's pretty darn loose. And what we want to do is we want to balance this camera. And so what we'd first do is we're going to loosen the grip a little bit, and we're going to slide this piece back and forth. Let's see, until it's somewhat balanced. That's the first thing we're going to do. That looks pretty good there. Now, the next thing we want to do is this right here is your drag. And so it's when you pan up and down with the camera, it's how much tension is on the camera, okay? And so this is where, if you're in the middle of a message, you want to do these really quick. Typically this will be balanced, so you don't have to mess with it. There's a little locking mechanism on the right side that locks it in place, but typically this will be solid. So if you're in the middle of a shoot and Jeremy's up there preaching and something's not right, I wouldn't start here. I would start with these settings here. Your tilt and your drag. And I'll show you two different things. One thing you do not want to do, you don't want to lock it into place, and you don't want to like slightly lock it, so that that being the resistance of your camera, you want to leave that fully open. And what you want to do is there's a plus and minus here, and if it's dark, you don't really have to see it. You can feel it. Anyways, you want to play around with it until it's really smooth. There's kind of a play between, you don't want it too loose and you don't want it too tight. You want it just in between, and you'll feel it. And I'll get back to how we want to. First off, just know that that's where the settings are. Second thing is there's a knob in the middle. It's a big round knob, and it's the same thing. There's a plus and the minus. That is the drag on your pan. So this knob here is the drag on your tilt up and down, and this is the drag on your pan left to right. And the same thing, you want to find the right sweet spot in between where it's not too stiff and it's not too light. So you'll want to practice these settings, one, preferably before church starts, and you want to get all your settings ready. If in some rare circumstances you don't have enough time to check it, then we'll have to do it live. But preferably before the service starts, you want to check all of these settings and play around with it. Now, once you get your drag set for your pan and your tilt, this being the tilt and left and right being the pan. Once you get that, then you need to test it out and play with it and make sure you can do really smooth shots. One of the things you want to do is, while Jeremy's up there, you want to picture when you're moving the camera, you want to, what I picture in my head is like driving a car. And so let's pretend that we're stopped at a red light. As soon as the light turns green, you don't quickly step on the gas really quick. And this refers to like Jeremy making a subtle movement and maybe walking to the left or the right really quick. We don't want to just quickly jerk the camera to make sure we cover him. What we want to do is, even if he gets out of frame, it's okay. We want to picture like being in a car where the light turns green and we just slowly step on the gas pedal and until we get to the cruising speed. And then when we're going to stop and we're coming up to another red light, we slowly step on the brakes until we come to a stop. We don't come to an immediate stop. And so that's what I want to say. And if Jeremy does get out of frame, it's okay. We'll work on it. But what we want to do is these really smooth. If he's getting out of his seat, we're gonna. My hands are off, and we're going to slowly pan up and stop when he's up out of his seat. So when he's walking, we're going to grab these handles very slowly. We're going to be really smooth with it. And if he starts walking fast, so we're going from slow to quicker to quicker to quicker to slow and stop. And that's how we want to do all of our movements. Another thing I notice is one, we never want to have our hands down at our sides. We always want to have our hands right up here ready to go. But one thing, because Jeremy can move really fast, and if we're not paying attention, we'll miss it. And so one thing we want to do is when we have our shot framed and it's stuck on just Jeremy and he's in good position, we never want to sit here with our hands on the tripod. If we do that, it creates a lot of shake. And it might be just slightly noticeable, but on the big screen, it's very noticeable, very visible. And I think it takes away from the mood that we're trying to create. We want to draw people into Jeremy and his teaching. And every little subtle thing, even as subtle as that little bit of camera shake, I feel personally it takes people out of that element, whether they notice it or not, or realize it or not. So we want to have, once we get our good framing, the camera's put, it's solid, it's not going anywhere. So once we get where we just want our hands like slightly off. Just, you could maybe barely touch it, but just slightly there, just ready to like grip and make a move. And when things do move, slowly pan. Now I'm just going to give you a scenario real quick. Let's say you're on camera 2, you're on the widest shot, and the stage is all pitch black, and we can't see where Jeremy's going to come up or where he's at. If you're more skilled, what we'd prefer is that you zoom out and see a big wide spot on the stage. Now this isn't a scenario that happens all the time, but it does happen. And it'd be nice to know what to do to prepare for it. So if you're on camera 2, our wide shot, it'd be nice to zoom out so you see the majority of the stage. Even if it's pitch black and you can't really tell if it's the majority of the stage or not. You'd want to zoom out, and whenever Jeremy gets back in, whenever the lights come up, you just want to stay still the whole time and not move your camera no matter what. Well, that will allow cameras 1, 3, and 4 to adjust and get a good shot. Once they get a good shot, then we can move and readjust camera 2, but first we'd have to wait for your tally light to go off. But that ensures us, if everybody's moving their camera, we want to rely on camera 2 very heavily to have the safe shot. So we don't want any movement out of your camera, even if Jeremy's framing is off. All of this stuff is a little unnatural to us. I think in real life, when you're trying to capture movement, I know whenever someone who doesn't film very often, you give them a camera and tell them to document something, they're doing what their eyes see and their brain sees a lot of times. And they think like, oh, I want to videotape this kid on a bike, and then, oh, I want to videotape his brother over here, and then, oh, his mom's over here, and he's blown out the birthday candles, whatever the situation is, and you're moving really fast. And instead, we need to think in our mind like a photograph. Like, I need to hold this really still on this kid, and then I need a really still shot on the bike, and I need a really still shot of his mom, and then I need a really still shot of the cake. And that's sort of the principle. I think, like, we need to slow down our mind and slow down our thoughts of what needs to be captured. And I think if we can grasp that, if any of that even makes sense to you, then I think we'd understand how to slow down all of our camera movements. So if Jeremy starts to walk out of your frame, it's not a hurry up and get it. It's more of a smooth, almost like butter, like kind of pan over to him. This will make us look way more professional if we can do that. It's okay if he goes out of your frame for a little bit, for a short period of time, if as long as your camera movements are very smooth. There's a couple other things we want to go over, and one is headroom. We want about an inch on your camera, about an inch of headroom above Jeremy's head. And this should always be the case. Let me show you an example of bad headroom and good headroom. Check out this clip. Here's one example of the auditorium being pitch black and Jeremy coming up with the light, and just how we need to improve a little bit on keeping our camera steady. And you'll see why we want to start doing that when you look at this next clip.
On June 17, 1966, during the height of the civil rights movement, two men walked into a little roadside bar and grill in the town of Paterson, New Jersey.
Here's one more thing to be aware of while filming, and this applies mostly to camera 1 and camera 4, and it's called lead space. Now, when Jeremy's talking on stage, a good lead space is to have space in front of him with just a little bit behind him. You can see the framing right now on James's camera. Bad lead space would be if I was completely centered right now in the frame, and even worse framing would be if the majority of the space is behind me. These are principles that apply to all shooting, especially live video. Now, we break them from time to time for creative reasons, but for Stream Team, every time we'll want the lead space to be in front of Jeremy. One other question that we've got when it comes to headspace is that a lot of you have been confused at what the actual top of the screen is. And when you're looking through the Blackmagic camera, there's a little bar on the top that says information about your camera settings. What you need to know is underneath that bar is the top of the video. The video doesn't go behind that bar, if that makes sense. So I'll show you right on here where the top of the screen is, and we'll highlight it in the video for you, just so that's clear.